Hello, everyone. A couple of you made it into campus, but way after class had started. And there were just a couple folks. So I decided just to post stuff on Blackboard since so many people were absent. I appreciate the two folks who braved the bad roads. And on the other hand, I'm glad that those of you who didn't risk your lives for coming in. So I hope everyone's safe and sound. I obviously, if you're listening to this, you've found it on Blackboard. There's a discussion board prompt that goes along with this. Please follow the directions on it and hopefully, cross our fingers, I'll see you on Monday. I'm going to focus today on Barry Brummett's Chapter 1 in Rhetoric in Popular Culture. As you're reading the readings for this class, I recommend a strategy for doing the reading is to go through the chapters and highlight the main concepts or the main keywords. And again, not just every single word, but the ones that are really shaping everything. So for me, the most important of those concepts in this chapter are signs, artifacts, and culture. You've read the material, so I'm just going to elaborate a little bit on what each of these means. So signs are of three types: indexical, iconic, and symbolic. Let me say right now that it's not critical that you identify which of these three a sign is. You're not going to be tested on the distinctions here, but I think understanding a little bit about the differences can help you understand how signs work. Okay, so first, indexical. Brummett says that these signs are linked to their meanings by cause or association. His example is fire and smoke. So you see smoke, you think fire. The fire causes the smoke. Or it could be via association. So if you see a UPS uniform, then you know that you have a delivery. Or you see the brown uniform, you think UPS. So the indexical thing is something that's closely related to or associated with or perhaps even caused by. Iconic are, for me, sort of the classic use of the word sign. So when you go to the restroom, you see the iconic representation of woman and man. So these are things that try to look like the thing that they're indicating. And then finally, you have symbolic signs, and these are systems that are based on abstractions. So language, you have words that stand for realities. Most rhetoricians, and I think Brummett is included in this, would say that all we have really are symbols. There is nothing apart from them in terms of what we know and what we can know. Aside from that controversial notion, symbols are certainly the most important aspect of rhetoric, although all three of these are very important. And you can see the use of signs. Now, with this concept and with all of the concepts in this chapter, one of the problems that we face with signs, indexical, iconic, or symbolic, is interpretation of what they mean. I was just reading today, someone was sending an advertisement to me from a company called Jet Pens, and they were trying to appeal to us in terms of looking at products by color. And with each color, they listed the meanings that go along with that, what the symbol of red is. So they were saying that red means energetic, on fire, hot, but that in Japan, it also means lucky. And so you can see in that that there's not necessarily conflict between lucky and hot, but there's certainly different sorts of meanings. So signs don't hold over time. They've got to be in context, like any rhetorical thing. Artifacts. I think that if we think about Hauser's concept of a rhetorical event, we can see a parallel between that and artifacts in Brummet. I think artifact is his version of the rhetorical event. The difference here is that an artifact brings to mind something that's static. something that we can see on the page. His quotation on page 13 in my edition of the book is, "An artifact is an action, event, or object perceived as a unified whole, having widely shared meanings and manifesting group identification to us." So he notes it can be actions and events as well as objects, but artifact brings to mind a physical object, particularly if you're used to doing research based on artifacts. So the result of signs and artifacts, let me go back to artifacts for a minute. Oops. I don't know if I can go back, so I apologize. It doesn't look like I can go back on this. So the next thing is culture. And culture is constructed by signs and artifacts. Brummett sees that culture is made up of all of these things, and that in fact the thing that identifies cultures is having different artifacts that represent it. He goes into the sort of big concepts of culture when we think of classical music or poetry or literature, but then also the source of culture that affect us every day, which he calls popular culture. One of the reasons that I include Brummett in this class is because I think that rhetoric has tended to privilege political discourse as rhetorical. And I think that the thing that affects us the very most is the day-to-day or the popular culture. So I really like Brummett because he gives us some ways of thinking about that. We'll talk about some of these concepts more down the line, particularly the notion of identification. And identification is that thing that we link from one thing to the other. Now, the problem with all of this is when there's conflict. So for today, I'm going to ask you to watch the Coke commercial that was on the Super Bowl 2014. I've got a link to that on the next slide, but I'll also upload it to Blackboard for you to see it. And then I want you to answer 3 questions. First is for you to make a list of the kinds of signs that you find in the commercial. And by kinds of signs, I mean for you to locate indexical, iconic, and symbolic. But I want you to give examples of each of them. So what would the Coke can be an example of? What would the various bits of clothing indicate? What does the cowboy hat do? So there's tons of signs in there. So what kinds are you finding? What's in there? So this is descriptive. The second thing is I want you to answer the question, is this commercial an artifact based on the definition that Brummett has? If so, why? If not, why not? And then third, I want you to think about the response that it's received and think about whether or not the conflict could have been avoided by Coca-Cola if they had taken a slightly different approach. Now, clearly, they could have not done, well, I'll let you answer that question. Is there a way that they could have accomplished this commercial and have avoided the conflict? Now, you may not be aware of the conflict. I just randomly pulled up the Coke commercial Super Bowl 2014 and printed out some of the links that talk about the problems. You are welcome to look at things that you find yourself, any back story that you want. The bottom link on this page is to the commercial. There's an article in the New Yorker that I listed that compares the Coke commercial to the Bob Dylan background. I can't even remember what that commercial was, and it's a longer piece. And then the other 2 are reports on the protest against it. Again, you're welcome to look at anything else that you want. What I want you to do is to post answers on the discussion board. And then I want you to come back and read what other people have posted and then post again. So your first deadline is going to be Friday at midnight. So the big work that you need to do Friday at midnight. And then you need to respond to others by Sunday afternoon. Well, let's do Sunday midnight. So by Monday morning, we should have a discussion board with everyone having posted, and then everyone choosing, let's say, 3 people to respond to. So by Sunday, you need to have posted 4 things on the discussion board. By Friday, your response to the questions that I've asked. And by Sunday, a response to other people's comments. I want you to take this seriously. That is, write a significant amount, make your point clear, but these are not formal essays. Again, don't attach a document. Write your responses directly into the discussion board. I'm not terribly worried about spelling, formatting, phrasing, all of that. I'm mostly really interested in your engagement in all of this. So again, stay safe, stay out of the snow, don't get stuck, and I'll talk to you later.